During the battle, Divine Emperor GK transformed his right arm into a striped giant serpent capable of stirring the sea and unleashing world-shaking power, while one of his feet became a massive heavenly pillar that suppressed all directions. Every attack displayed overwhelming strength. Luo Feng observed that GK could only unleash a small fraction of the power of a world-level primordial bloodline, revealing only a few of its characteristics. If GK could fully exploit even a small portion of that bloodline, he would have already escaped the braided cage and become a high-level primordial life. Luo Feng concluded that GK was still too weak, or rather that he himself had become far stronger. His enormous body possessed an energy reserve of 12 billion times, and although he could currently control only 1,200,000,000 times of that power perfectly, he was already significantly stronger than when he fought Secret Ruins Divine Emperor and the others. Controlling such an enormous energy reserve did not reduce his explosive combat strength. Luo Feng reflected that when fighting Secret Ruins Divine Emperor he had already been one major level above the pinnacle level, and now he felt another major level stronger while still remaining within the braided cage. No matter how powerful beings inside the braided cage became, they were still like ants compared to high-level primordial life. While calmly thinking through these matters, Luo Feng easily suppressed Divine Emperor GK. GK fought with all his strength and erupted repeatedly, but he could not shake the endless blood sea because the difference in strength was overwhelming. Finally, he returned to his normal form, withdrew all of his aura, admitted that the battle had been satisfying, and openly acknowledged that he was far from being Luo Feng's opponent. Luo Feng then dismissed the endless blood sea with a thought, leaving the garden completely undamaged. Taoist monarch Long Ju admired Luo Feng as someone who had truly reached the invincible level. He also understood that there were 3 different paths to invincibility: possessing a spiritual will that escaped the braided cage, exploiting a world-level primordial bloodline to a sufficient degree, or cultivating the half-primordial fusion Dao. Among these, merely breaking free with spiritual will was the most common and weakest form of invincibility. Long Ju speculated that Luo Feng probably did not cultivate through bloodlines but instead followed the fusion Dao, although he could not understand why Luo Feng had never received guidance. Later, Luo Feng, Taoist monarch Long Ju, Divine Emperor GK, Bo Shu, Bai Yin, and Kai Zhen gathered together. GK directly asked Luo Feng whether there was any solution to his inability to fully exploit the world-level primordial bloodline he had already refined into his body. Since he still could not escape the braided cage, Luo Feng asked whether refining the bloodline into the body first was truly necessary, suggesting instead that one should first study the primordial bloodline carefully, understand its mysteries and essence, and only then refine it. Bo Shu and the others listened closely because they were eager to find any path that could help them escape the braided cage. GK explained that the bloodline path consisted of 2 major methods. The first was refining the bloodline into the body and then exploiting its potential, which was the method naturally used by innate primordial lifeforms. The second was to first comprehend the mysteries and essence of the primordial bloodline before refining it, allowing its full power to be displayed. However, GK emphasized that the second approach was extraordinarily difficult, even with treasures obtained from great primordial halls that allowed cultivators to perceive every mystery of a high-level primordial bloodline. Truly understanding it remained nearly impossible. Taoist monarch Long Ju added that a single high-level primordial bloodline contained the mysteries of more than a dozen Dao, making comprehensive understanding almost unattainable. Luo Feng agreed. Innate primordial lifeforms were naturally born within the infinite primordial space, so their bloodlines inherently contained numerous Dao. For example, Luo Feng had analyzed the Star Tower blood scale and determined that life-type secret patterns accounted for approximately 34.3%. Destruction-type secret patterns accounted for approximately 9.2%, while many other categories filled the remainder. Even with his deep mastery of life and destruction, Luo Feng could only thoroughly study about 43% of the Star Tower blood scale because the remaining paths lay outside his expertise. GK explained that the infinite and life paths he specialized in had only reached the half-primordial level. He had deliberately chosen the high-level primordial bloodline most compatible with himself, one composed of approximately 50% life and 30% infinite attributes. But many of its mysteries belonged to realms beyond the braided cage. allowing him to understand only a portion of them. He stated that refining a primordial bloodline completely required understanding 70% of its mysteries, a standard he could not achieve even with a high-level primordial bloodline. Therefore, exploiting bloodline potential directly was much more suitable for him. Taoist monarch Long Zhu agreed, saying that among cultivators who escaped the braided cage through the bloodline route, the overwhelming majority relied on exploiting bloodline potential, while those who truly comprehended the essence of a bloodline were as rare as 1 in 10,000. Luo Feng then reflected on his own situation. He could completely comprehend the mysteries of low-level primordial bloodlines related to life and death. High-level primordial bloodlines were much more difficult. Yet he had already surpassed 70% comprehension in 3 of them: Heavenly Fire Shadow, Ghost Prison Disaster Beast, and Catastrophe Beast. Heavenly Fire Shadow consisted of approximately 50% life and 30% destruction. And because Luo Feng had nearly perfected both Dao, his overall comprehension exceeded 70%, enough to securely become a high-level primordial life. Ghost Prison Disaster Beast contained approximately 40% life and 40% destruction. And Luo Feng's mastery of those Dao also pushed his overall comprehension beyond 70%. Catastrophe Beast was based on the shadow he had once witnessed in the land of origin. Its bloodline primarily involved life and death, with destruction accounting for more than 50% and life about 30%. Luo Feng's comprehension of this bloodline also exceeded 70%. He realized that he could become a high-level primordial life whenever he wished. He could even integrate all 3 high-level primordial bloodlines into his body simultaneously and fully exploit all of their potential. Luo Feng also sensed that these 3 bloodlines ranked among the strongest high-level primordial bloodlines. If all 3 were fused together and their full potential released, they might directly reach the limit of high-level primordial life and perhaps even break beyond that limit to enter the realm of world-level primordial life. Nevertheless, Luo Feng also knew that the bloodline path was widely believed to carry many future drawbacks. Although it possessed tremendous potential, it was considered to bring countless long-term problems, which was why the cultivation path of the enlightened remained the most respected and ideal road. Divine Emperor GK explained that the bloodline cultivation path carried 2 major risks: the influence of bloodline will and memory contamination caused by bloodline comprehension altering one's self-awareness. While many cultivators in the dark sacred realm refined high-level primordial bloodlines, only GK had successfully refined a world-level primordial bloodline. He explained that every additional bloodline merged into the body brought another bloodline will, making specialization in a single bloodline the best approach. He had chosen the world-level primordial bloodline because he hoped to eventually reach the world-level primordial life form through a single bloodline. But its bloodline was far stronger, memory contamination more severe, and its hidden potential much harder to excavate. GK admitted he might have overestimated himself and that a high-level primordial bloodline might have suited him better. Luo Feng asked whether merging multiple bloodlines was necessarily disadvantageous. Dragon 9 Taoist monarch explained that cultivators with profound understanding of bloodline mysteries could merge multiple bloodlines into a stronger one and eventually achieve the world-level primordial life form. Although such cases were extremely rare and required complete mastery of bloodline mysteries, GK advised Bo Shu, Bai Yin, and Kai Zhen to focus on a single bloodline if they chose the bloodline cultivation path. GK then asked Luo Feng for guidance because he had encountered countless obstacles while excavating his bloodline potential. Luo Feng admitted that his understanding of bloodlines was not as comprehensive as GK's or Dragon 9's, leading them to speculate that Luo Feng had likely chosen the fusion Dao among the 3 invincible cultivation paths rather than relying heavily on bloodline cultivation. When GK asked how Luo Feng would cultivate primordial bloodlines, Luo Feng explained that he would first choose a compatible primordial bloodline, carefully study its complete secret pattern map over a long period, then merge it with his body and observe how its mysteries transformed his physical form. By combining the understanding of the secret patterns with the physical changes after fusion, he would deepen his comprehension before finally following the bloodline instinct to excavate its hidden potential. GK admitted he had already attempted such comprehension but could not understand the world-level primordial bloodline at all. Luo Feng understood that such bloodlines were simply beyond GK's current comprehension. Luo Feng then mentioned that if one's spiritual will could break free from the braided cage of life, it could suppress bloodline will to some extent and allow much deeper excavation of bloodline potential. GK admitted helplessly that his spiritual will could not break through the braided cage and asked for a method. Dragon 9 explained that at their cultivation level the spirit had already been tempered to its limit. So only improving one's cultivation path could further strengthen spiritual will. GK answered that his own path could no longer improve. Luo Feng then asked whether they knew why some high-level primordial life forms could maintain enormous bodies. He explained that the true reason was the existence of a highly efficient and profound mind consciousness system far superior to the ordinary consciousness network formed by cultivators. He advised them to study multiple high-level primordial bloodlines while stripping away all unrelated mysteries and concentrating solely on understanding the mind consciousness system. As the mind consciousness system became more complete, spiritual will would become much more capable of breaking through the braided cage. Luo Feng himself could clearly sense that the perfection of his own mind consciousness system was rapidly expanding his mental consciousness and bringing him ever closer to a breakthrough in spiritual will. Which was why he had emerged from seclusion to seek this final awakening. GK and the others admitted they could not distinguish the mind consciousness system from the countless intertwined bloodline mysteries because the secret patterns appeared as an incomprehensible mass. Dragon 9 agreed that even high-level primordial bloodlines were too difficult to analyze. Whereas low-level primordial bloodlines could at least be categorized and studied systematically. Luo Feng replied that low-level primordial bloodlines simply did not possess a sufficiently powerful mind consciousness system. This disappointed everyone because it meant there were no shortcuts. To isolate and understand the mind consciousness system required first completely dissecting and categorizing high-level primordial bloodlines. And anyone capable of doing so would naturally gain enough understanding to perfectly match a high-level primordial bloodline and eventually become a high-level primordial life form. GK concluded that without sufficient spiritual will, comprehension, or the ability to excavate bloodline potential, breaking free from the braided cage remained impossible. Bo Shu, Bai Yin, and Kai Zhen realized that success through the bloodline path required at least one exceptional advantage among willpower: comprehension, or bloodline potential excavation. Dragon 9 then asked Luo Feng whether there was any method to comprehend cultivation paths in which one lacked talent. Luo Feng questioned why anyone would devote great effort to a path they were naturally unsuited for, explaining that he himself focused on the paths where his talent was greatest. Although he possessed some ability in the path of matter, his greatest strengths remained the paths of life and destruction. After reflecting briefly, Luo Feng answered that enlightenment had no shortcuts and relied entirely on long accumulation before sudden understanding. If someone could not comprehend a Tao, it simply meant their accumulation was still insufficient. Dragon 9 silently accepted this answer. Luo Feng then instructed Bo Shu to invite two guests named Flame Wind God Emperor and Thunder God Emperor into the garden. Bo Shu immediately understood because he knew Luo Feng came from the land of origin and recognized these two divine emperors from the same homeland. Outside the cave mansion, more than 100,000 cultivators had gathered, hoping to hear Tao discussions from the invincible Luo Feng divine emperor. Primogenitor Yan Feng and Thunder Ancestor stood quietly in a remote corner because they were among the weakest cultivators present. When Bo Shu publicly called for Flame Wind God Emperor and Thunder God Emperor, the enormous crowd immediately turned their attention toward the two. Although Thunder God Emperor was a common title, hearing both names together made it obvious they were the intended guests. Bo Shu respectfully informed them that Luo Feng Divine Emperor had personally invited them inside. Under the watchful eyes of more than 100,000 cultivators, the two entered the inner garden while everyone wondered why such relatively ordinary cultivators had been summoned instead of the many peak experts waiting outside. Many concluded that Luo Feng must already know them personally. Inside the spacious garden, which was far grander than the modest residence owned by primogenitor Yan Feng and Thunder Ancestor, the two saw Luo Feng seated in the highest position, with Dragon 9 Taoist Monarch and Divine Emperor GK seated below him, while Bo Shu, Bai Yin, and Kai Zhen occupied seats farther to the sides. Luo Feng warmly greeted them after a long separation, feeling tremendous pressure before the invincible expert. Primogenitor Yan Feng asked Luo Feng simply to call him Flame Wind, while Thunder Ancestor requested to be addressed by his original name. Shu Ma. Luo Feng laughed and introduced them to everyone, explaining that only a handful of divine emperors had emerged from his source world and that only he, Flame Wind, and Thunder had reached the dark sacred realm. He further revealed that both Flame Wind and Thunder were actually his seniors. Divine Emperor GK and Dragon 9 Taoist Monarch immediately realized that the two came from the same homeland as Luo Feng. From that day onward, intelligence organizations throughout the dark sacred realm rapidly investigated Flame Wind and Thunder, causing their names to become widely known. Although their personal strength remained ordinary, they possessed an extraordinary distinction. They were fellow natives of the invincible Luo Feng Divine Emperor. Luo Feng had already reached the invincible level beneath the primordial realm, making it difficult to find any worthy opponent. If he activated a primordial bloodline, he could easily break free from the braided cage at any time. Because of this, his mindset had changed, and his future goal became finding a superior method of breaking free from the braided cage. He was also willing to help the cultivators of the dark sacred realm and held goodwill toward divine emperors Flame Wind and Thunder from his homeland source world. Luo Feng invited them to sit and encouraged them to ask any cultivation questions, since they had previously been too weak to seek guidance from pinnacle-level experts. They had accumulated many doubts. Thunder explained that he had refined the high-level primordial bloodline of the Sky-Eye Thunder Beast and attempted to excavate its potential by using various thunder powers, but achieved very little. Divine Emperor GK, who possessed the deepest understanding of bloodline cultivation in the contemporary dark sacred realm, questioned Thunder about his methods and personally guided him. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of cultivators gathered outside Luo Feng's cave mansion, waiting for his appearance. Luo Feng emerged first, followed by Dragon 9 Taoist Monarch, Divine Emperor GK, Bo Shu, Bai Yin, Kai Zhen, Flame Wind, and Thunder. As Luo Feng appeared, he briefly released his terrifying aura. Heaven and earth trembled, the rules twisted, and the surrounding space became dim and dark. Every cultivator felt they could be effortlessly torn apart by his presence. Luo Feng immediately withdrew his aura, and complete silence fell over the crowd. Luo Feng introduced himself and humbly stated that although his cultivation time was not long and he could not solve every cultivation problem, he wished to share his own experiences in the hope of inspiring everyone. All the cultivators respectfully thanked him, understanding that an invincible existence had no obligation to teach them. When Luo Feng invited questions, the first cultivator asked whether there were methods to break free from the braided cage besides Bloodline Ultimate Awakening. Luo Feng allowed Dragon 9 Taoist Monarch to answer because they had agreed beforehand that Divine Emperor GK would answer Bloodline questions. Dragon 9 would explain hidden knowledge, and Luo Feng would answer questions related to enlightenment. Dragon 9 explained that there were three major methods to break free from the braided cage: Bloodline Ultimate Awakening, mastering the source world origin to become the master of the source world, and breaking laws with force by advancing directly from the half-primordial level to become a primordial lord. When asked how to master the source world origin, Dragon 9 explained that the source world origin contained multiple great Taos, and one had to leave a soul imprint in more than half of them. Since every source world possessed at least 9 great Taos, a cultivator needed to cultivate at least 5 compatible great Taos to the second realm of the godly king before having any hope of mastering the source world. Everyone realized how difficult this requirement was. Excelling in 1 Tao was common, 2 Taos was rare, and mastering 3 Taos was already extraordinary. Dragon 9 himself had attracted Lord Starlight's attention because he had cultivated 3 Taos to the half-primordial level, allowing Starlight to arrange a compatible source world for his reincarnation. Luo Feng also understood this difficulty because although he excelled in the Taos of life, destruction, and life and death, his source world did not simultaneously contain all three. Dragon 9 further explained another method of becoming the master of the source world through spreading faith. If every living being in the source world sincerely believed someone was its master, then even the source world's origin consciousness would acknowledge that person. However, he emphasized that this method was even harder than mastering more than half of the great Taos. When asked about other methods, Dragon 9 explained that those born within a source world would not be rejected by it after breaking free from the braided cage. If they became a world-level primordial through the primordial bloodline, they could slowly refine the source world origin over time. If they instead became a primordial lord through breaking laws with force, They could instantly refine the source world origin of their homeland. Another cultivator then asked how breaking laws with force was achieved. GK and Dragon 9 both turned toward Luo Feng. Luo Feng explained that Senior Yuan and the other seniors had taught that comprehending the primordial level Dao meant mastering the highest level of power, allowing one to break laws with force and directly become the strongest form of primordial life. A cultivator pointed out that the half-primordial Dao already felt completely perfect, where even adding the slightest mystery seemed like an unnecessary burden, making it impossible to imagine how the primordial level Dao could be comprehended. Luo Feng replied that among the three methods of becoming a primordial life, breaking laws with force was by far the most difficult. During the Godly King stage, cultivators constantly improved while remaining within the braided cage, and each advancement naturally increased their strength. However, advancing from the half-primordial Dao to the primordial level Dao meant stepping beyond the braided cage itself. At that stage, adding further mysteries no longer increased one's strength, making it impossible to know whether the chosen direction was correct. Cultivators had to blindly search in complete darkness until they independently formed a complete primordial level Dao. Luo Feng then gave his own opinion that anyone incapable of comprehending more than 70% of a high-level primordial bloodline should not even consider attempting breaking laws with force. Everyone was stunned because many had secretly hoped to achieve this method through luck alone. One cultivator noted that comprehending 70% of a high-level primordial bloodline already allowed someone to become a high-level primordial life by using the bloodline itself. Luo Feng replied that breaking laws with force contained no luck whatsoever. In his opinion, understanding at least 70% of a high-level primordial bloodline was merely the first and lowest requirement, while the true requirements must be many times greater. Luo Feng reached this conclusion because he had studied numerous low-level primordial bloodlines. Many high-level primordial bloodlines, the Eye of Life and Death, the blood-colored scale of the Star Tower, and the Wisdom Book, giving him a vague understanding of the level reached by primordial lives who had escaped the braided cage. He believed the primordial level Dao had to be at least equal to the mysteries contained within the primordial ancestors' bloodline and the single blood-colored scale of the Star Tower. Since he knew the unimaginable level represented by that blood-colored scale, he understood that his own half-primordial life and death Dao remained extremely far from the true primordial level Dao. Luo Feng admitted that he could only vaguely perceive that level from afar and remained far from reaching it. Therefore, he intentionally set the threshold at 70% comprehension of a high-level primordial bloodline simply to discourage most cultivators from wasting time pursuing unrealistic dreams. Anyone incapable of understanding even a high-level primordial bloodline had no realistic chance of breaking laws with force. The Dao discussion continued for 3 full days. Luo Feng, Divine Emperor GK, and Dragon 9 Taoist Monarch answered questions regarding methods of escaping the braided cage and various cultivation problems. Luo Feng mainly answered questions concerning the Taoes of life and destruction while honestly admitting his lack of expertise in unfamiliar paths. Bo Shu, Bai Yin, Kai Zhen, and many other pinnacle-level experts also shared their own understandings of the Dao. Luo Feng, Dragon 9, and GK carefully listened because every expert possessed unique strengths. When the discussion finally concluded after 3 days, all the cultivators departed satisfied, having gained tremendous benefits. Luo Feng himself also obtained new insights, especially after discovering that several cultivators had personally witnessed the ancient war between the innate primordial life camp and the cultivator camp. Because Luo Feng's cultivation history was relatively short, many older cultivators possessed experiences he lacked. Some originally came from the Shell Valley world group before its destruction and were later relocated to the Dark Sacred Realm. Others had watched their own source worlds be devoured by innate primordial lifeforms and had been forced to immediately destroy their homeland avatars, becoming cultivators without a source world. From these accounts, Luo Feng realized that the cultivator camp was completely disadvantaged in the ongoing war. He also noticed that Senior Yuan and the other seniors had continuously released more treasures for exchange as the war situation deteriorated. In the early days, only a limited number of treasures had been available in the Great Primordial Hall, but many more had since been added. Since Luo Feng still possessed more than 30 million unspent merit points, he decided to thoroughly inspect the hall's collection, paying 1 billion primordial crystals for a complete tour. He was greeted by a silver-haired female puppet guide with golden eyes, who offered to escort him through the entire collection. Luo Feng chose to visit the primordial prisoners first because he was particularly interested in studying living high-level primordial lives. The guide informed him that the Great Primordial Hall currently imprisoned more than 30,000 high-level primordial lives, all captured as spoils of war by the cultivator camp, and she began leading him to observe them one by one. Luo Feng followed the silver-haired woman deep into the primordial hall, where space and time shifted with every step. He soon saw a fierce high-level primordial life imprisoned inside a space cage. Its entire body burned with flames. Every breath contained primordial force, and its gaze alone caused Luo Feng's heart to tremble. He realized that although his energy reserve of 12 billion times might equal roughly 1 or 2/10 of the creature's power in quantity, the difference in quality was immeasurable. A single breath or claw strike from such a being could instantly annihilate countless versions of himself. Luo Feng understood that escaping the braided cage represented a complete qualitative transformation. Although he already possessed the confidence to use 3 kinds of high-level primordial bloodlines to escape the braided cage, he decided not to rush. He planned to first perfect the life and death Tao, receive guidance from Yuan and the others, and then determine the most suitable method for advancing. The silver-haired woman explained that high-level primordial life was only the lowest level worthy of attention in the infinite primordial space. Countless low-level primordial lives existed but were too weak to matter in camp wars. World-level primordial lives formed the main strength of both camps during ordinary battles. Above them were the primordial lords, making 3 major cultivation levels after escaping the braided cage, with enormous differences between each. Whenever the lords entered battle, it meant full-scale war had begun, and the present era was already in wartime. She revealed that the cultivator camp suffered tremendous losses, with entire world groups falling and many source worlds becoming food for innate primordial life. However, the innate primordial life camp also suffered devastating casualties, with billions of high-level primordial lives dying and many world-level primordial lives being slain. The 7 world-level primordial corpses displayed inside the primordial hall had all been killed during a war tens of thousands of epochs earlier. She further revealed that even primordial ancestors had fallen and that the current war was unlike previous ones because the innate primordial life camp ignored casualties and attacked without restraint, forcing the cultivator camp to fight head-on. When Luo Feng asked whether the situation was truly that serious, she confirmed that it was extremely dire but refused to explain further, saying he would understand after receiving guidance. She already knew Luo Feng cultivated the fusion Dao because every puppet life within the primordial hall was part of herself. As the guardian of the dark sacred realm, nothing happening there could escape her awareness. She acknowledged Luo Feng's extraordinary potential and predicted that he would become an important force for the cultivator camp in the future, though he remained far too weak at present. As they continued walking, Luo Feng saw hundreds of imprisoned high-level primordial lives. Each emitted overwhelming pressure, yet they were merely the lowest-ranked soldiers on the battlefield between the camps. Facing the gazes of hundreds of these prisoners also tested Luo Feng's spiritual will. But he remained calm because they could not harm him. Luo Feng then chose to inspect the corpses of primordial lives. The silver-haired woman explained that countless high-level primordial corpses had been left after the wars and could be exchanged for 1 trillion primordial crystals each. Many cultivators usually pooled their resources to purchase one corpse, since studying it and harvesting its materials allowed them to recover most of the cost. Luo Feng saw countless gigantic corpses resembling endless mountain ranges, each radiating resentment, despair, and anger. The accumulated negative emotions from so many corpses created overwhelming oppression. After examining them all, he encountered the 7 colossal world-level primordial corpses. Each was larger than the entire land of origin continent, ranging from 5,000ths to 2% of the size of the complete source world. Compared to them, ordinary high-level primordial lives appeared insignificant. Luo Feng felt as though he were standing before an entire source world, and he believed that even a single glance from such beings in life would have instantly reduced him to ashes. The silver-haired woman explained that thousands of high-level primordial lives could not survive even one move from a world-level primordial life because the difference between major cultivation realms was overwhelming. She also stated that although primordial ancestors had died in battle, none of the cultivator camp's lords had ever fallen. even though the cultivator camp remained at an absolute disadvantage after endless ages of warfare. She firmly believed ultimate victory would belong to the cultivators because their lords were undying. Luo Feng knew that primordial ancestors truly could die, since the blood scale within his star tower originated from one such fallen ancestor. He questioned why the camp remained in such a terrible position despite possessing immortal lords. But the silver-haired woman merely sighed and repeated that he would understand after receiving guidance. She admitted that the immortality of the lords was the greatest source of hope, allowing cultivators to continue fighting without fear. Although Luo Feng now understood the cultivator camp was losing ground, he still did not know the true situation across the infinite primordial space. Afterward, Luo Feng inspected every treasure and secret treasure stored within the primordial hall. When he finished, the silver-haired woman asked whether he wished to redeem anything. Luo Feng noticed that treasures worth more than 10 million battle merits were absent. She explained that the primordial hall only permanently stored secret treasures valued below 10 million battle merits. More valuable treasures were comparable to world-level primordial corpses and therefore kept elsewhere instead of inside the dark sacred realm. Luo Feng realized these treasures exceeded 100,000 infinite space reward points in value, making them at least equal to the Eye of Life and Death, with some even more precious. He also learned that each cultivator could purchase only one secret treasure valued above 10 million battle merits and was forbidden from trading it. Returning to his cave residence, Luo Feng carefully studied the detailed information of every high-value secret treasure. As his understanding deepened, he recognized that his own life and death Tao had gradually deviated. His cultivation had always been profoundly influenced by the star tower because, back in the land of origin, the blood scale had guided his entire path. However, the secret patterns within that blood scale contained 34.2% life-related mysteries but only 9.2% destruction-related mysteries, causing his life and death Tao to lean heavily toward life. His path pursued the ultimate life form before transforming its immense vitality into destructive power, making his cultivation inherently life-oriented. Even during the Divine King stage, his Tao had already favored life. He concluded that his current life and death Tao consisted of roughly 70% life and 30% destruction. Although this imbalance originated from the very beginning, he could no longer change direction and instead had to continue forward. He believed there was no truly wrong cultivation path because pure life or a combination dominated by life could still eventually reach half primordial and advance further. What he now required was another secret treasure that could complement the blood scale by emphasizing destruction while still containing both life and death mysteries. Using both treasures together would broaden his understanding and allow his life and death Tao to develop more completely. After careful consideration, he selected the sky-splitting saber, a naturally formed weapon born within a mysterious region of the infinite primordial space. The saber contained the highest level of destruction mysteries while also preserving vitality within endless destruction, making it suitable for cultivators following both the destruction path and the life path. Its redemption price was 30 million battle merits. Luo Feng immediately decided this was the ideal treasure because it perfectly complemented the life-focused blood scale by placing destruction first and life second. Although he had always favored sabers, he had never previously encountered one suitable for him. When asked to confirm his choice, he accepted without hesitation. The system then asked whether the sky-splitting saber should be delivered to the dark sacred realm or to his homeland source world, since such an invaluable treasure could attract danger outside the source world. Luo Feng chose to have it transmitted directly to his homeland source world.